Hi hand readers! In today's video, which is number 7 in my little series of mini tutorials on how to assess people's thumbs, I'm going to be talking about bent thumbs, thumbs that bend back at their tips. My name's Jennifer. I've been reading hands for many years. I've written 4 books about hand reading and with a 5th coming out next year. And if you'd like to know more, please contact me or read below for all my information. What we can very reliably ascertain is that people with bendy back thumbs are a little bit more watery in their characteristics. What I mean by that is that if you look at water in nature and you see the principles it exhibits, we see that it flows, it's adaptable, it takes its shape from what holds it. And we can map those onto the people who have very bendy back thumbs. So let's say, for example, they might be more flexible, they're more accommodating, they will go with the flow, they might take the line of least resistance, and so on. So there are all these traits and qualities that go with the water element that we then map over onto the person. Bendy back thumbs are sometimes called hitchhiker's thumbs. And there are a lot of wonderful traits that go with them, such as I've mentioned, this kind of willingness to compromise, the perhaps cooperativeness, the dislike of conflict, that's another thing. So this, again, like I always say with all aspects of hand reading, can be taken into its unredeemed, into the less positive side. So let's say, for example, a person with bendy thumbs doesn't like conflict, but they'll be very quick to escape, to get out of the situation rather than confront the situation and actually deal with it. So there's a subtle navigation really in the way that you interpret this for the person around their strength of character. And this brings me to the area of hand reading that I'm quite passionate about, and that is what I call counseling and coaching themes. Now, with a very bent back thumb, the primary counseling and coaching theme that you might want to address with your client links into boundaries. Have they found their no? And can they stand in their authority with their no? Because unfortunately, often you'll find people with bent back thumbs tend to be a bit of like the human marshmallow who is just squished and squashed and used and abused and manipulated all too easily. But interestingly, we've also got the flip side of that, especially if the tip is also big. And then the person with that bent back thumb could be also very manipulative. So for the hand reader, this is where the intuition comes in around what type of person are we dealing with here? Also, of course, need I say, cross-referencing the hands to many, many other factors. And I find for myself in the way that I work is that somehow I'm always calibrating the person's energy. So it's a sense, it's a feeling that I get it. That's why I always talk so strongly about how hand reading is 1/3 intuitive. And we can't really extricate that from the way we read hands. Well, perhaps some people read more scientifically, but for my approach, there's a sensory component to it. It's like I'm picking up information. And then I will be able to assess very much, does the person have their no? Do they have that sense of being abused? Are they feeling perhaps undervalued, disrespected? It's a very big thing for many of us is we don't like to be disrespected. So it's an area of exploration. That is another counseling theme, as per what I've just mentioned about there are actually hundreds of different counseling themes. It's quite interesting as a hand reader to identify what those themes might be. Actually, in another video that I presented several months ago, I spoke about the 5 realms of human experience, and that is the counseling and coaching context in chirology. That is like the safety net. That gives us the basics of these various counseling and coaching themes, and then they're subcategorized into many, many others. So again, people with the bent back thumb might be easily persuaded. They might have rather an escapist tendency, and easily flattered or easily seduced even. So they are, as much as they could be manipulative, they could be manipulated. And also there's an underlying determination in that in itself. It's not like these people are complete pushovers. You know, there's all these subtle variables on the theme here. And they might be, for example, also very easily diverted from one aim to another. This marking, this bent back thumb, might also add to a trait of the potential for gambling. But gambling is another conversation. It's aspected more by the ring finger of the hand. Perhaps I'll come to that in another video. Another meaning for bendy back thumbs is that the person tends to be quite extravagant in the way that they spend money. Just to touch a little bit on the careers that are suited to those of us with bent back thumbs. I myself have got quite a bendy thumb. Anything to do with teaching, acting, a lot of actors and mimics have got bent back thumbs. doctors, veterinary scientists, or rather veterinarians, people who are actually dealing with the public. Any career that requires flexibility would be, you'd quite likely. Music is another one that comes to mind. Here's a picture of extremely bendy back thumbs. They belonged to the late great bass player Jaco Pastorius. Any career really that is a service profession where one's dealing with the public and you have to be adaptable. And before I wrap up today, I'd like to talk for a moment a little bit about thumbs that bend inward. So for me, it's quite difficult to even do that. But it would be a thumb tip that's habitually held in an inward position. And this is a sign, much like with nails that curve towards the body. There's a great deal of introspection, there's introversion. This is not the sign of the extroverted person. In fact, a bendy back thumb would be a more extroverted type. This is a person who's not very happy, probably. There's a sense of insecurity, there's a weakening of self-determination. They could also be quite self-pitied. In other words, self-pity is a form of survival, it's a survival strategy. We all do that at times in our lives. They're very vulnerable, actually. It's a sign of vulnerability in a person. You know, if you think of people who go with the aged always will slowly, the hands will slowly curve inward. And then you get people who often are holding onto their thumbs. Take a walk through a shopping center and notice how often with men I've seen, where one hand will have the thumb held inward, and that's a sure sign that there's something really troubling them. There's something quite vulnerable about what's going on in their lives. So the bent in thumb tip is like the beginnings of that curving inward, that sort of going back into the womb, that fetal-like position, perhaps if I really stretch the imagination. But I think you get the drift. They're quite absorbed with themselves, and at worst, actually, this marking could show quite a strong materialistic streak. It could aspect also the person who needs no end of support. Okay, that's it for today. In next week's video, I'll be talking about how wide the thumb is, the breadth of the thumb. Is it thick or is it thin? Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next week.